Yeah, so we jumped on with the relocation and we did our thing, and now we're here and we're set up and we're going. It's really wonderful. It's a dry weather kind of country, this, so when you see anybody turn up when it rains, you know say it's special for them. So serious, sincere thanks for those of you who decided to turn up. This experiment that we've been doing for the past 34 years has been, it's a literary experiment. And we have had, well, first we have to thank people at Edna Manley College, who has hosted us for the past 34 years. We want to thank entities like UWI who have partnered with us on various things, but also the extended tertiary institutions across the island. We want to thank them. Just a big up some noise for them also. But most of all, we want to thank the literary community. And this is a community of people who basically have breathed their essence into this. That's why it still exists today. Because all the people who actually do literature, whatever we call them, for anything at all, they just turn up. It's like even if you don't see a man for a couple of years, you know that he's in full support, you know. And from time to time, with people like Muta or running to him, say, hey, we send people to come down there, and stuff like that. I remember calling Oku this evening, and I said, boy, Oku, why I have to call you personally, because we're sending out blasts, and sometimes you just think, why do we really have to call? But Oku give me a serious dress down. And I'm basically telling you this so that, one, you understand why he's not here, and two, to promise that as of now, there are certain people that will definitely have a call whenever we're having certain function. But him say, after I'm just below, I say, oh, you called me so late. Him say, you know what Mervyn mean to me? And then he went into this impassioned kind of thing about Mervyn and his importance to the whole poetry movement and stuff. And while he was doing that, I was thinking, yo, this would be nice if him there do this here over the microphone to people. And then him say, yo, you called me so late, you diss me. Anyway, he did say that he was going to try and come, but when I spoke to him a few minutes ago, he said, boy, it'll rain and he must sit it out. But he would still sound angry with me, you know? So this has been the passion that is happening with the people who actually take part in these things, and all of whom we have Columbused and claimed as part of our literary family. We state with name to them, and we see them and we say, yeah, these are ours. We, tonight, on behalf of, we have there's some important points that I need to make. Yes, tonight on behalf of these people, I draw courage from them to utter what some people call some unspeakable stuff. And let me tell you exactly what I'm talking about. You see, Mervyn Morris, he has been, for decades, the father of contemporary Jamaican poetry. But if you ever try to acknowledge that around Mervyn, he'll viciously shut you down right away. You can't say nothing like that around him. You know, and shut you up right away. No, I hear none of that. But tonight, I want to find the courage to stand up and face that brother with the white beard and say, Mervyn, we love you. We love you, Mervyn. We love you. Now I'll link up on that because Mervyn might track me down afterwards. All right, so 2001 was a magical year in Jamaica's literary history. It's the year when Colin Channer, Justine Hensel, and Kwame Dawes founded and launched the Calabash International Literary Festival. Over the 22 years of existence, They have brought global voices, the top global voices in the literature, right here into a bedroom. And it has been an experience where we can't even compare as to what that has done, what that has contributed to the Jamaican literary community. Is a major contribution. I would say definitely arguably the single most important contribution. You know, so I introduce to you tonight one of the co-founders of Calabash, Kwame Das.
Good evening. Good to be here. I just want to say a few words about Mervyn. I can't disagree with the statement about Mervyn's importance. In a number of interviews that I've been given, it happens around this time, there's always the question of sort of why Calabash and so on and so forth. And one wants to begin with the notion that it was an attempt to fill a void, talking about workshops and things like that, but you cannot talk about those things without describing what existed functionally for emerging writers, anybody who coming up. What existed were just a few writers, what persisted for years, but whose character involved nurturing, encouraging, and reading a whole lot of poetry written by a whole lot of people. Some of it not particularly good, but all of it reaching for something. Mervyn's reticence about sort of singling himself out is because he saw himself, and always speaks about it, as a group of writers who emerged about the same time. Tony McNeil, Dennis Scott, Wayne Brown, who argued with each other, wrote back and forth with each other, fell out and got back together, but were writing and creating a body of work that was fundamentally eclectic and different. These were all distinctive voices. Why do I say that? I say that because we like to come up and talk about Mervyn's brevity, and I've been guilty of this problem too, and so on and so forth. And Mervyn has pointed out that there are a few longer poems, I'll have you know. But what was distinctive about Mervyn as a mentor, as somebody who took your work in, is that he really didn't try to get you to write anything like him. This was never his agenda. His thing was to tell you what you're doing. And then in that great, very, very subtle way, sort of coax you towards what is good and sort of drag you away from what is bad. And I learned so much that I looked forward to Mervyn's review of the poems because I knew that I wasn't writing like him, but I knew that the lessons in Mervyn's work were fundamental to our poetry that I could create. And I say that because he valued the writers that I mentioned, whether it's Tony McNeil or whether it's Wayne Brown or whether it's Dennis Scott. These were very different poets, very different writers of different, I would say, ranges of voice and so on. And they were valued and they were important. And he set a standard and a kind of range in Caribbean poetry and certainly in Jamaican poetry that I think has transformed it and has given it voice and so on. Mervyn is at the center of it. Safia Sinclair, Aisha Hutchins, all of us have gone through Mervyn's hand. And I really appreciate it. But the other thing I appreciate about Mervyn Morris is that he continued to generate work through all kinds of issues. And especially at the time, there's a time, I'll be honest with you, when you say, when you talk about male writers, female writers, and the impact of women writers in entering into the space of domesticity and family and so on and so forth. And you sort of make these declarations, these gender declarations, and then there's Mervyn. He's been doing it from before that. Talking about religion and dealing with religious ideas and so on and so forth. I was a big Christian, and so I go with Christian business and so on and so forth, and then, you know, then there's Mervyn, sort of dealing with these issues in such sophistication and care. And then, to culminate everything, when Karkin had put out Mervyn's collected works, this is a collection that was so classically Mervyn. It was not like any collected works. Because Mervyn's idea was that I'm going to make a book that is not just taking this from this book and this book. I'm going to make a book that reads as a whole in itself, and that your engagement with it would be a journey through this imagination. But then it is a book that can contain us and that can keep us sustained in a clear and beautiful way. We have in Mervyn Morris a giant. And we will never appreciate who he is fully in this moment. But he's given us a body of work that is basically so important to who we are as Caribbean writers, as Black writers, as writers in this world. And I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for Mervyn Morris, for what he represents, what he has done for me as a writer, and what he does for all of us. So this is my word. Mervyn, I really thank you for everything you do. Thank you so
Thank you, Mr. Dawes, for that heartfelt tribute. I'm going to introduce another speaker on our lineup tonight, Beverly Lashley, who is the National Librarian of the National Library of Jamaica. She's been so since July 2017. She has a distinguished career in librarianship and business management spanning over 30 years, with experience working in international contexts. She's a Fulbright Scholar and the recipient of the Caribbean Information Professional Award in 2011. And she holds a bachelor's in library studies from UWI-Mona and an MBA from Nova Southeastern University. Her former positions involved working on digitization initiatives such as the Caribbean Virtual Disaster Library as part of the Caribbean Disaster Information Network. And this woman boasts strength in various areas of marketing of the services of the library, project management, and grant writing, project and research proposals. So can we please give a warm welcome to Ms. Lashley as she leads us.
Thank you very much, and good night, everyone. I mean, I'm saying I'm coming up here after Kwame Dawes, but my presentation will be very short as my height. All right? So, Master of Ceremony, Casey Garvey, Mr. Tommy Ricketts, President of the Poetry Society of Jamaica, of course, man of the moment, Professor Emeritus Mervyn Morris, and he's been Poet Laureate for 2014 to 2017. Miss Olive Senior, our present Poet Laureate, and I'm seeing Mutabaruka in the house. Of course, Mutabaruka, I'm hoping you will smile for me today. Cultural leaders, poets, ladies and gentlemen, of course, Kwame, I mentioned you before. Good evening, all. I count it a privilege to represent the Board of Management and the staff of the National Library of Jamaica as we join in the celebration of 34 years of the Jamaica Poetry Society and honor renowned poet, Professor Mervyn Morris. Cheers to the current president of the Poetry Society, Mr. Tommy Ricketts, former leaders and all supporting teams for continuing the development for the field of literature across our nation. Your work stands on the shoulders of so many who have gone before, but is distinguished nonetheless as we embrace the changing face of Jamaica as penned by her poets. Again, congratulations and thank you for hosting us. I will elaborate just a little bit on how poetry in Jamaica has lifted in new heights with the installment of Mervyn Morris as Jamaica's Poet Laureate of Jamaica. On April 15, 2014, in the halls of the National Library of Jamaica, then Minister of Tourism and Entertainment, Wickham McNeil, announced the appointment of Professor Mervyn Morris as Poet Laureate of Jamaica, first such appointment since independence. You may shake your shake. This declaration came after much work from the executive of the NLJ, the Entertainment Advisory Board of the Ministry, and of course, Professor's gracious acceptance of the appointment. Nearly 10 years later, we can all agree that it was the best move to date in poetry in modern Jamaica. The art form was duly recognized and promoted to the Jamaican people as an institution in the Poet Laureate of Jamaica program. And who better to be the mind and face behind the inaugural development than one who we call the godfather of Jamaican poetry, Professor Mervyn Morris. Mervyn Morris as Poet Laureate, he has changed with seeing to the nurturing and safeguarding of the poetic spirit of Jamaica. And so it is in that numerous Jamaican poets across generations openly attest to the fact that he has been a chief cornerstone in their development, always encouraging them to stay tuned to the many iterations of Jamaicanness and to the art form that is poetry. Many of you will know his famous line, "Never to use two words where one will do." As Professor Morris moved on into his role with great clarity, he ensured that the Poet Laureate program, the National Library of Jamaica, and most importantly, his poet compatriots had maximum visibility and fair regard. Morris's most memorable initiative as Poet Laureate was his traveling showcase entitled The Poet Laureate Presents. Here he gave platform to several established up-and-coming poets who shared their works with new audiences, especially around rural Jamaica. The National Library of Jamaica, we partnered with the parish libraries as Professor's desire was for Jamaicans to reconnect with their community libraries and what they had to offer. In addition to live performance spaces, Morris ensured that interaction with the written word was part of his exposure for poetry. Supported by the NLJ, he began a weekly feature in the Gleaner entitled From Our Poetry Books, wherein again he gave platform to those talented Jamaican poets and their works which he believed were to be better known. As Poet Laureate, Morris had a warm and ever-present spirit. He often gave his public endorsement for other initiatives which promoted Jamaican literature. He participated fully in key events such as Sunday Love Affair with Literature at UW Mona, Kingston Book Festival, Drawing Room Project Writer Retreat, and I'm seeing Millicent in the house, Calabash Literary Festival, Talking Trees Literary Festival. coming, it's more. Auntie Rochi Festival, Ground Nation, the launch of the Miss Lou Archives, Poetry Society of Jamaica Fellowship, along with overseas speaking engagements serving the diaspora. The National Library of Jamaica, as a cultural institution, will continue to show maximum respect for Professor Morris and his many publications, most if not all of which have found their home in the National Collection for generations to come. Quite noteworthy is that months into his appointment as Poet Laureate, he released the book, Miss Lou, Louise Bennett and Jamaican Culture, a seminal text on the work and life of Miss Lou, our godmother of Jamaican poetry. He would later participate significantly in the launch of the Miss Lou Archives, one of which has gained critical acclaim worldwide. Each Poet Laureate is tasked with generating a publication, and so at the end of their tenure, and in the same spirit of generosity, Professor Mervyn Morris used the opportunity to produce the works of 61 Jamaican poets via the 2017 anthology In This Breadfruit Kingdom, and many of the authors are here in the room. The Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport is now working with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to get this text on the national reading list for secondary schools. In closing, I will say, Professor Morris, thank you for being who you are. Your contribution to nation building through the development of our cultural confidence is nothing short of legendary. In fact, it is exactly the spirit of Miss Lou working through your unique contributions which continue to lift us all. We will continue to honor your legacy by offering Jamaican poets at home and abroad platforms for their own lights to shine. To Prof. Morris and the Jamaican Poetry Society of Jamaica, we salute you. And at this point, I'm going to ask Prof. Morris to come forward because, of course, we have a little token for you. During the tenure as Poet Laureate, the first Poet Laureate post-independence, we have all the newspaper clippings, every one of them. As librarians, remember, that's what we do. So we put this together for you, sir, and enjoy.
Yes. Big up Bev Lashley, you know. Hey, since I'll honor this because I've been here long enough. I've seen this kind of long line of things that are now referred to as historical points. In 1991, a Jamaican film came out called The Lunatic, and it got some critical acclaim and stuff. The star of the show was Paul Campbell, and he thought he was very pleased with his performance, and he thought that after this, well, bust out and thing, and he started getting all these offers from abroad, from out of Hollywood, and all of them were basically almost kind of typecasting him into this kind of madman role. And he felt that he needed to do something to prove that he could do other roles. And he came to me and he said, well, listen, I have this idea for start a Jamaican series, and we're going to call it a Chameleon series. And in the series, with every episode, I'm going to play a different kind of character. So the strategy behind it was that people would see him playing all these roles. And he wanted my involvement. And I said, well, I don't know, I'm not really impressed with Jamaican theatre thing. And he said, no, man. And I said, why? And I said, listen, you know, I'm kind of committed to literature. And a lot of the stuff that's put on film, they're not properly written, you know. And I'm taking myself as a serious literature person now. And he says, no, for the first of the Chameleon series, he's going to make sure that the script is on a level. And they've chosen this story that they're going to use as the first episode. And he showed me the story. So I'm reading the story. I didn't even look who wrote it because I'm thinking, oh, come with some crap. And I'm reading the story and I'm like, shit. The story was called Country of the One-Eyed God. It was written by a Jamaican who was living abroad at the time. But just on the strength of that story, I was sold that, yeah, he's appreciating the need for the screenplay for these things to be strong. That well, what I read at the time wasn't a screenplay, it was the actual story that the author wrote. And the author of that story is now our current poet laureate, Olive Senior. If you guys have not seen, it's a short film, I think it's like half an hour, Country of the One-Eyed God. It's available on YouTube for free, so you should definitely check it out. None of the rest of episodes in the series was on that level, but it was very deep on many levels that has been used in many discussions on university campuses and stuff, so you should really check it out. Tonight, we have the honor of presenting to you. Do I have to say doctor? Or just say, oh, poet laureate, Olive Senior.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. In typical poetic fashion, you know, I haven't quite been told what I'm supposed to be doing here. But it's such a pleasure. And first I want to congratulate Tommy and the other founders of the Poetry Society and everyone who has, over the years, sustained it. In Jamaica, it's quite a feat to keep anything going, much less something that's supportive of poetry. So congrats to all of you. As for Professor Morris, the godfather, there's what has been said already, I truly endorse. And of course, Kwame has said it much more eloquently than I could, and I have to agree with everything you said. I just want to share one little anecdote about Mervyn, which I think it's the only anecdote I have, so I've probably said it before. But I didn't grow up in Kingston. I'm from Montego Bay, went to school there, went abroad, came back. I really didn't know any writers in Jamaica, very few people in Kingston when I returned from university. And I entered some work in festival, which won gold and silver medals, and that's when I first met Mervyn. Mervyn was really the first Jamaican writer of note that I met, and he was incredibly kind to me. It was very meaningful to meet someone like him who was so generous, because writers are not necessarily generous to each other, and especially at that time, I can attest. And I have never gone to school. I haven't taken any courses in poetry anywhere. And the main lesson in writing poetry that I learned came from Mervyn, because like everyone else, I showed him some of my poetry. And I don't even remember what poem it was, but I remember Mervyn returning it to me with one word. Knowing Mervyn, it would have had a question sign after it, but the word was cut cut, you know, just a few places. And I know we joke about Mervyn's brevity, but I want to say to you that as a writer of poetry, and I teach poetry, I say to my students the most important thing to learn about being a writer of poetry is learning how and when to cut your own words. So I think of poetry as sculpture, where you start off with a block of something and you carve it, you cut away at it, and that is how we should think of poetry. So I really want to thank Mervyn for the one lesson in poetry I've had. I hope it has served me well. I do write some very long poems, but it's not so much cutting the whole thing as knowing when you're saying too much, or you're repeating yourself, or you're using unnecessary words. So I just share that with you as thing. I'm going to read maybe just one or two poems, because I know people have a lot that they probably want to share. One is a fairly new poem that I don't think I've ever read it, and it's based on a photograph that I saw in, I think it was in the Observer some years ago. And I'm interested in photography and the camera and the eye of the camera, and how the human eye and the camera's eye share things but also interrogate each other. And I described the photograph that I saw in this poem, which is called Sure Shot. And the child, age 10, leans over with her cell phone camera to take a picture of her classmate in the coffin, and a picture of the child taking a picture of her classmate in the coffin, draped with a cloth reading, "Stacy Ann, gone too soon," ends up on the front page of the newspaper. Of what use is that? Is this grieving when the leave-taking is a moment for shooting a picture of the dead child who wasn't dead a month ago, when she was caught in a crossfire and a single shot laid her low, brain dead, in a hospital bed, while the picture freezes and the shooting's still up in the air? Where do we go from here? What can we say when the fashion pages display models getting smaller and younger every day? The camera doesn't lie. So many shots per minute, automated, digitized. Worlds can be broken, blown to pieces in the blink of an eye. Yet, some old-fashioned curating refuses to die. We all end up in a dark room forever. And just to change the tone, this is kind of tongue-in-cheek. I grew up in the country, and I'm very well aware of farming practices, which include some mystical kind of practices, which is celebrating. It's called Advice and Devices, and it's in the Gardening in the Tropics book, one of my Gardening in the Tropics poems. Gardening in the tropics can be quite a struggle if you don't know what you're doing. When I go to the agricultural fair, everyone there comes crowding round to see my prices. Even the ones who take advice from the government man and use a whole heap of spray and fertilize out all it is from the pumpkin and yam. When they ask my secret, I just smile and say, live right and do good. That's true. For the world out there is full of hellish creatures threatening to undermine you like cutworms and ants. But the worst ones are the bad-minded, two-footed wearing pants, who will do things to harm your garden or steal your crop, unless you know how to make them stop. Listen to me and don't tell anybody. Once you find the right spot for your garden, before you fell a tree or pull a weed, be sure to ask pardon to dig, with a sprinkling of rum for Mother Earth's sake. You should also take a swig and rub some over your head in case there's a snake. Then, as soon as you lay out your field, Plant at the four corners, overlook being to be your eyes when you cannot be seen. Should the evildoer still trespass, for even overlook being has to rest, be sure to burn wangler, but not to excess. With the ashes, mix a trace of the dirt from their footstep, with powdered hummingbird wings, for they never stop beating, and oil of compellence, with 6 fresh leaves of what some call busy, and we call impatience. Wrap up in courage, tie with chainy whisk, and bury at the four corners under the fence at the exact commencement of the new moon. The next time someone, though we all know who, should take pass and come into the property to commit offense, his foot bottom, his whole body will start to itch and tremble, and that culprit will have no recompense but be forced to wander the earth, scratching. After that, your patch will thrive, for the Lord likes you to deal with the covetous, so he can smile on the righteous. There are other recipes and devices to use for protection, but my main advice is never explain, especially to those who rely on the plan of the government man with a book. They are the chief ones in need of your wisdom, for their fields with all that fertilizer and spray will never stay healthy. All I will say, when people ask how my garden can bear so year after year without wearing thin, you must know what you're doing. For instance, certain crops will only grow if planted the first night of the full moon. Others should be planted when the moon is waning. There's a right way of doing everything. Take pumpkin. The morning you plant it, plant nothing else for the day. For once you put the seeds in the ground and water, you must stay at your yard, lie down and rest, unless you want your pumpkin to grow worthless and run around with no time to settle down and bear. And when the vine is nicely blossoming, ask a pregnant lady to walk all over it to make the fruit set and grow full like how she's showing. I don't have to tell you plants won't thrive if you're quarrelsome. Sometimes I go to my field and I sing, the birds join in, and we have a real harmony going. I keep the crops happy, treat them right, so they put out their best for me to take to the agricultural fair and madden everybody there. I don't worry about bad eye and jealousy, for I have nutmeg in my mouth, in my pocket, rosemary. When they ask me for my tips, I take a deep breath and come right out and say, just live right and do good, my way. Thank
you. Yeah. So one of the things that you have to navigate, especially when you're honoring Mervyn, is that Mervyn has done so much, but in a kind of stealth way, when just behind the scenes, do all these things, and almost like forbid us to kind of talk about it, Luckily, I'm kind of up in Asia, so it can't stop we. Mervyn was like tennis champion and was super athlete, so the days gone, you never upset him because you don't want him slappy, But listen, I think about it and I hear like Olive talking about certain things about her bringing her poems to him. And the reality is that all the poets of worth, I mean, you hear Kwame come up and talk about, Mervyn looking at his work. Mervyn touched all the, Miss Lou, Mervyn was into Mutabaruka, Okwonura, Mikey Smith, Jean Breeze, and if you name all of them come down, at some point, their work was looked at by Mervyn. And it's not like you have to solicit it, I don't think Mervyn remember all the people in work him look at. I probably remember that in the look panel and they said, bring your poems and come. And it was like, you never know whether for me that him would dress you on and say, yo, you really need to stop writing, or him think I say, the better reach a state where somebody need to look at him work and guide him. But he looked at the stuff and go through, make him notes them. And it was, as I said, the interesting part, you never had to go to him. He would come to you and say, hey, let me see your works. And it's funny, he singled out one of the poems, them. Maybe the rest never meant enough to be singled out. And he singled out that one and told me, say, yeah, he had some interest in that. And I went with that poem and studied what was happening in it as to why he would single it out. So even just that singling out meant a lot to me. I think at this point I also need to point out Mervyn's wife, you know. Yo. What can I tell you? I won't say nothing. But I want to say that, yo, tonight when we're gathering to kind of say, yeah, Mervyn, respect, it means a lot to me. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity and the privilege to do it. And I'm glad that Mervyn agreed to it. It never got easy, you know. And I tell him, I call Mervyn and I tell him my mother, I said, no man, but you know, did something for me 10 years ago. I'm like, dude, 10 years ago. I'm glad tonight we're arguing about it. But we're happy to have him here tonight. I want to just invite him to the stage for this kind of share a vibe. Give it up. And I'm going to love it, the godfather of Jamaican poetry.
Well, thank you, Tommy, and thanks for the Poetry Society for having organized this. I'm very happy and surprised at how many people were there back there. I didn't realize that. Thank you for coming. People said nice things, but really, I am very happy that they've found me helpful from time to time. But I don't think that I have had anything like the influence on particular poets than one of my late friends, Wayne Brown, who ran a workshop which was really productive, you know, in a regular way. And while we're at it, I should mention what a pleasure it was to share poems sometimes with Tony McNeil and Dennis Scott, both also now have passed. Okay, well, let me not take too much. What I'll do is just read a few poems. I think I might have one that isn't very short. But it's short enough, short by comparison with many others. A poem first about the difficulty of writing at all, which many of us know and care about. It's called Muse. The thing is that you think you are about to produce something useful and it seems to vanish. You know, Muse. When you woo her, she will fade. This is how the game is played. Smilingly she leads him on. He approaches, whereupon the figure in the evening air begins to slowly disappear. Extraordinary trade. When you woo her, she will fade. This is how the game is played. I've been inspired by the work of others from time to time. This poem is Grown Nation, which is dedicated to Cedric Brooks. It was really very loud. I was very keen on mystic revelations, which most of you here will have been similarly keen. But a poem, a song called Rasta Reggae was something that I found very pleasing and very inspiring. In fact, and I read this poem called Rasta Reggae once on campus, and when I had finished, one of the students said, in a more or less friendly way, "So where the reggae?" So the poem is now called Grown Nation. Out of that pain, that bondage, heavy, heavy sounds, our brother's weary march, our shackled trip. A joyful horn takes off, the freedom time, remembered and foretold. Release, I brother, let me go, let my people go, home to Ethiopia in the mind. Unlike some of you, at least one of you I know, named Raymond, I never met Don Drummond, but like many of us, I was moved by his trombone playing, and when he died, I played over and over and over the 2 LPs that I happened to have. And sort of wrote this poem largely as a result. It's called Valley Prince for Don Drummond. Me one, way out in the crowd, I blow the sounds, the pain, but not a soul will come inside my world or tell me how it's true. I love a melancholy baby, sweet with fire in her belly, and like a sprite the woman turn a whore. Cool and smooth around the beach, she wake the note inside me, and I blow me mind. Inside here, me one in the crowd again, and plenty people want me blow it straight. But straight is not the way, my world don't go so, that is lie. Wanna give me back my trombone, man, it's time to blow me mind. Love is a giving and a measure taking, amputation, recreating, everlasting interface, a prison and an open space, a teasing glimpse of Holy Grail, a generator that can fail, the naked jugular, the knife, the torsion balance in my life. Palimpsest. Grandma, much younger than her age paper, is giggling on the floor with baby John, as with his daddy 40 years ago. Age is just a number, as the slogan says. Grandpa, seeming buried in a book, gives thanks for her endearing gift and mumbles larking, what will survive of us is love. Well, this one's very short, I'm afraid. Dinner party. Between convivial flashes of hilarity, a brooding presence. Half his friends have died, and each white bird is like a premonition. He shuffles towards the car door, struggles in, and waves goodbye. It's not so long, you know, it's only one page. Obit. To pay the rent while working on his novel, he got a job in journalism. He jumped into a swirl of bars and drunks and prostitutes, pastors, area leaders, Christians, beggars, politicians, pimps. Baby mothers whispered good material for the novel, and now and then a hint of breaking news. He grappled with the fiction page by page, shaping the manuscript, honoring our people and the craft. The book was nearly ready when he died. But drive-by shootings, fire bombings, headless corpses, diabolic dons had made him want to do some more on evil pullulating in the mix. And finally, checking out. I slammed the door. Dear, are you positive there's nothing left? Well, no. Something remains, I'm sure of that. Some vestige of our lives in this bare flat will linger. Some impulse will outlive our going, recycled in the flow of being. We never leave. We always have to go.
I think we can do a more epic kind of response. Mervyn, thanks here, man. And Helen. Yo, a serious applause for Helen, man. We're close tonight with a brethren who is one of them man where you're one of them kind of people who say the stuff where you don't want to say. And him say some stuff and you just think, well, him say that. Yeah, well, I mean, really, I think that, but him say it, you know. And coming up, it's funny because Muta's most popular poem is this poem. But to me, my favorite Muta poem is the first poem I actually hear from Muta. And I was like a kid in high school. I'm hearing this thing I blast out of the radio. You know, every time I hear the sound, Mr. Brown, Mr. White, that not right. Lord, every time I hear the sound. And it prepared me. You know, when I was coming up and people like Carlin Cooper lived on campus and I say, yo, you know, we reclaim our Africanness, we know if I have cream here, you know, cut off the hair, and, you know, and a lot of our brethren was changing their names to African names and stuff. Something that a lot of people who never understood would probably just sit and think, yeah. But you know, this thing about in the beginning was a word, the word have certain vibrations, you know. And can you imagine a race of people grow up and every time their name is called, it's from the vibration of their colonial masters that it give off. You know, can you imagine that? So just them few lines in the back for going out. That was brevity to, you know, Mervyn. Just to say, yo, Mr. Brown, Mr. White, that not right, you know, every time I hear the song. And that, I've never really said that to Muta, like say, yo, Bridget, that it heavy, because I was in high school them days and I just grew up and it just kind of in my head all this time, you know. When I decided to grow my hair, it was that vibe there, and I was just looking at the mirror, I was like, who that? You know, my need for kind of reconnect with something from Africa, you know. And I mean, I've been lucky for being Jamaican because we have all these people like Miss Lou. Miss Lou was a genius, you know. Miss Lou came up and she was telling us Nancy stories. And at the time, I just did think Nancy was a chickster brother, you know. Never understood, but you grew up knowing the name of Nancy. When you grow up later, you realize that Nancy is part of a pantheon of African gods. And we start kind of realize what Miss Lou was kind of children in her little folks' tales. It's amazing what them people achieve. And to me, this Virginia, I don't know what will go down, but what will happen is that maybe, 50 years from now when I'm gone, people will delve and say, yo, the brother in Muta Baruka, you see what I'm there do? Tonight, we have Muta here as one of the men who Mervyn did look on him works too, and he will come talk to me. So give it up, big time
Good night. I need some explanation from Mervyn. Here why now. In the 70s, as a youth, that was like 50 years ago. I used to see Mervyn. I think he was about 70, you know. And this one, me at 70, I try to see how much year old he is. He must be 71. But it's a serious thing. All of the people they really know when I got you. I said, some old man, I know me find me at 70 now. So I want all the youth them look at me and all. But it's a thing because when we started, by the way, I must say something. Rupert is there still? Yeah. Rupert is there. No, I'm not telling you, say, believe you me, Rupert was something to me a while ago, I nearly crying or a stuff. Yeah, now I'll tell you why now. Rupert bring this and give me. No, it's in hard that thing out. You know what it is? It's the first time I ever tried to publish some of my poems there. And I tell you how I publish it. We used to go between the university and GIS, we have a version of GIS. And we used to thief the paper them, the printing paper them. Remember stencil? We used to stencil it and creep up in some, one of them officers, I think that's creative arts in that somewhere about there, the university, and we used to sneak inside it and print them and go back down at GIS and thief more paper. And we bring out a little book in 24 poems. This is the first I ever tried. And I know that you used to walk one of the road and sell them, like how people are selling Star. Yeah, man. So when we take them poems and now one, after a while we start to know Mervyn. Some people don't know, Mervyn come like an unseen hand. You know, one of them highway things there, him a watch you, but you don't know which part in there. Or him have a bell, but you know, say him never beat you. But it's like that to me. I mean, no, it's like that to Breeze, to Oko and Mighty Smith. The whole of it will come up in them time there. as what them call dub poet. We used to feel like we have to give Mervyn a poem them. Because we want him to see it. We want him to know, say, some youth out there do certain things and things. And trust me, the man make we understand and make others who never really recognize we as legitimate poets in Jamaica. Even come up at the university as an English teacher, I love to say Englishman, but as an English teacher. As an English teacher, come make the university and other so-called scholars know, say, them you, there are some legitimate poet. Now because them are not writing in the conventional, English and British way and them way, but them is legitimate poets. And if you want, people say dub poet or reggae poet, them poetry have value. I'm going to tell you, Mervyn, I know where you deal with when you say value. Because after 50 years of writing them poems take me around the world, everywhere. How much continent am I? 7? Only Antarctica I never here. And at them poetry, when we write in the 70s, carry come here so now. And when we decide to publish a legitimate book and get publisher, a person named Paul Issa, come to me and say, he want to publish a book. And he published this book. And Mervyn Morris write the introduction to the book. And I never start writing poetry because of this book. I start to write some other poems. And I start to give Mervyn the poem them. Mervyn must have more poems than when me write about my poem them. And I say, all right, don't publish our next book now. But I never really want to cast Mervyn to write a next introduction. So we'll publish our next book. So in order not to make Mervyn write a next introduction, but use the same introduction as the next book, we'll make the same book become the next book, which is the next book. So all of the introduction in the 2 books is Mervyn, but it's the same introduction in the 2 books. And we couldn't separate the book them again. Because even though this book will come out as just this book never come out as just this book, it come out with this book. So Mervyn, we love you, Rachel. We know why we love him. Because it makes him know, say, you're not going to school, and you're not going to teach after they say you're wrong and you're right. I'm not going to say you're wrong and you're right, Him love short poem things, Yeah, because sometimes you know, say, it's flexible when I talk too much and I read the poem then. It would have preferred me just go and read the poem and talk to talk. But you will love talk in between the poem them, That's how it works out. But it's like an invisible man, a watcher. And you make conscious because say it's a real man. Like the spirit God thing. Where say, Joe, that can't go on because he never manifests himself. But Mervyn will manifest himself at any time. Especially when they have poetry reading. I love him because it makes me feel like, say, when I do, can go beyond just the little era when I'm there. And I come to say it really carry me go in an era where I wonder how I reach this up. See? And the man still look like 71. Because I don't know if I hear Linton saying resign now. Linton, yesterday. Day before yesterday, I'm a Calabar. I said, you write a book now, I say, all right, that is it now. I go home to my wife and that's it. I'm done with the writing and all. I know say Linton poetry serve him. And him at 72. And I'm at Poko at 72. I don't know how much 70. I must can't work with about 70 and he must be 72, Mervyn must be 72. But Linton said him done now. So I'm going to sit down. I know say Linton not done tour, which is something. No, I still arrive. But you see this, they put a book here. Trust me. I have to give thanks, brethren. I have to give thanks, the unseen hand. And that me call you. The unseen and the conscience where me I write with. Me I say, all right, I'm not Mervyn that poor man, but me sorry for again. I have to read it for because we do say we go put it somewhere where later down the line, after when me read 71, you know, me I go say, all right, me really write that and it's set up to the thing like Mervyn and that's why. Yeah, it not set a standard, you know, and it not to move right from there, you know. It just accept it as part of the archives. You know, and you say, all right. But you and yourself know, say, you have to reach that level there, that standard. If a man like Mervyn say, I'm going to keep your poem there. You know, I don't know much of them throw already still. I don't know what I'm throwing because I say, wait, I'm going to write this now, man. Because I'm going to follow about that I write that, but I really want to write it. But me give thanks, say, he was that unseen person when I write my poem there. But I know say, anytime I write it, I have somebody can keep to and them keep it. Have something of value. You know, when I just start write poem, my mother, in my mother's house, my mother, in the middle of the night, I write, my mother said, turn off the light. The thing say, poor, she can pay light bill. I mean, no, say, I pay more than light bill now. Actually, I see other people like me who are teach the light. And I can't, but you can't say enough about Mervyn Myers. I mean, I'm going to really try to pick it up and say this, that. All me know say, it is my unseen hand, my teacher who is not my teacher. Can never teach me to write poem. I write poem before me find me, but if you know, say when you give me a poem, you never look on it like, sure, you know, not proper English, not this, that, because I will have film poem, not proper English either. You hear the Dancho Man poem. The Dancho Man poem. You know, and we can't call out the people them who used to go and like say, we're not legitimate, you know. Me and Oko and Jean Visa Michael, but me not say it. And him good I know it, you know, but him not say it. You know? But me have to big him up, and me have to big him up for Jean Breeze. Because Jean Breeze go to England, and them they are order of the British Empire. And you remember when we start out with Jean, when it just had two Rasta, I was Rasta, you to write poetry and thing, and we're going to give him it. And him just, well, I'm on it, up the same way, up in a prison. Barbara Blue and set up a thing and come, Michael Smith, great poet, you know, and we all in the same age group, 70, but Mervyn, yeah man, you did it, and you did it well, I will give thanks, I'm glad say you're still there, and I know so I'll give you more poem for look on. And do what you want me. Give thanks.
Yes. So we have to end on them kind of high note there. We just want to thank the people and the participants and all the people who read the open mic, you know, the people who came for kind of join us and, you know, pay special tribute to. We have to stop rubbing and call the man the Godfather of poetry, man. We have to stop. You know?
Black Mafia.
We start calling the unseen. But listen, Kwame does, trust me, Kwame don't live here, you know, so we really consider it special for having him here on this occasion. And we know so the motivation for coming is because, hey, we are honored and everything. Big up Kwame down, that's no special power. But very important for them. Yeah?
More Jamaican poet for Calabash.
You hear that, Kwame? All right. Bev was a very keen person for kind of including on this thing because, you know, now National Library of Jamaica we're talking about, you know, and it's also them run the Poet Laureate program. So we're really happy for kind of have Bev come through. Thanks here, Bev. Of course, our current Poet Laureate, very, one of the most charismatic Poet Laureate we've had so far, but very kind of humble and stuff, but she's, if you don't know this woman at work, you must check her out. Unassuming, but some tough works and stuff. And you must definitely check out Country and the One-Eyed God. Write that down and go check out that. It's free on YouTube, so check it out. You know, so really, Olive, it's nice to kind of have you here as a part of this thing. We have to thank Mervyn again. A next round of applause for Mervyn at the head of the year. Casey, come up and come stand at the side so that, you know, at least there's one picture of my album, please. The voice of Poetry Society. I call up a friend of mine and I say, yo, we're doing this thing and it's supposed to be special, you know, can we get some plants? And Nicola. Laura. Yeah, Nikki, stand up and say a word. Laura, who decides that she'll take on the decor, Laura at the back there, she's the director of the textile department. But the audience, who despite the rain, yo, usually when rain fall, we don't see nobody. Rainfall is like me, you're lucky to see a dozen people come. And look at, so audience, give yourself a serious Poetry Society, 34 years. We continue every last Tuesday we're there. And we're happy when you turn up, but if you don't turn up, we know say your heart is with us still. But just remember, last Tuesday of each month, we're here still trying this literary experiment, still trying to kind of improve our writing, still trying to kind of reach beyond where we are. And I tell you, enough people don't know this, but in the beginning when we started this thing, one of the main guiding persons was Mervyn, and he was one of the person who basically pointed out to me and said, yo, it's not a democracy. At some point, you have to just decide what you want to do with the literature and just stick to it. And to turn with some people who are ready for that. And we have found a way to kind of do that. And we see the growth outright. So Mervyn, again, thanks. People, next time.
Yeah, my first one off. We're going to 70.
We're on our way. See, last Tuesday each month, people, Poetry Society of Jamaica. Give thanks for passing through everybody. Audience, give thanks for coming.